At number 10 we have graveyards. Graveyards are common things, but what isn't common is a desert graveyard for sea mammals. I'm not even sure how that makes sense, so let me explain. Another mystery of the desert came about when a surprising burial site was found in the sands. In the Atacama Desert in Chile, there's a hill, Cerro Bolena, which also means Whale Hill. It's 40 meters above sea level, and during some roadwork in 2010 was found to contain fossils of 40 whales, along with a collection of other marine mammals, dolphins, seals, and other kinds of swordfish. What a day at work that would be. Initially it seemed like an amazing case of fossilization, but it just didn't add up. How could dozens of animals of various species have died all at once, and more importantly had been preserved? The biggest explanation is that the numerous mammals and fish were deposited over time. The hill happened to be a place where the bodies were washed up, and nature preserved them for 6 to 19 million years. True or not, it definitely isn't something one wants to stumble upon while hiking through the hills.
Coming in at number 9, we have an alien skeleton. Get a load of this freaky find. What is it? An alien-looking skeleton was found buried in a leather pouch in the Atacama Desert in Chile in 2003. Oh, and not just any part of the Atacama Desert, it was in an abandoned town behind a church, just to make things creepier. The strange looking skeleton was just 6 inches in length, so I don't know, about like this big? Tiny alien, tiny little alien. Also, the carcass had just 10 ribs, where humans have 12, so this coupled with the weird look of the remains, it led people to believe that the Chilean discovery was legit an alien. Have a closer look. Like, I'm no conspiracist, but I have to say that this is weird. Too weird. However, in 2012, after an intense study on the remains, medics found that the skeleton was that of a female baby girl suffering with a number of gene mutations. It is likely that the girl had dwarfism or something of the like.
Coming in at number 8 we have fairy circles. That might make you think of something cute and whimsical. Well, it's quite the opposite of that. It's actually more about a lack of life than anything charming. In the Namib Desert and in Australia, there are odd circles in the middle of the desert that are evenly spaced out and exactly concentric. It looks like something a conspiracy theorist would claim there was evidence that a UFO landed there. More reasonable theories, such as fire or winds being the reason, were ruled out by the fact that these bare patches could last decades, some remaining free of plant life for as long as 75 years. It wasn't until 2017 that any type of viable explanations was put forward. The leading explanation was termite colonies, and that plant root systems do this as a means of distributing water. Neither of these fully explain why the circles remain barren for so long with no visible trace of colonies, but I guess this makes more sense than the circles being made by literal fairies. Either way, I'm not sure how I feel about this one being unexplained. It just seems a little too creepy.
Getting very intense at number 7, we have war jets. 2003 was a tense time in Iraq. The United States and friends had just joined forces to launch Bush's war on terror. Now, this included the Iraq War. The justification for the shock and awe bombing campaign was that the Iraqi government were hiding weapons of mass destruction. While the weapons were never found, if there were any, a fleet of hidden warplanes were found in the desert west of Baghdad. The Iraqi Air Force stayed out of it when the country was being attacked, presumably because they thought that they were no match for the US military, and they were probably right. Instead of having a lot of their planes destroyed, they buried them. Now, some 30 odd Cold War era Inceptors and brand new attack jets were found when a small part of a plane was seen poking out of the sand. Can you imagine unearthing them? How terrifying. The findings made some people even more convinced that the country were hiding weapons after all, but the US have never found them. If they are ever dug up from the sand, well, that would be the scariest desert find of them all. Time may well tell.
Number 6 brings us to a more disturbing one. One desert brings us the emptied body of Ryle Singleton. Not just the body, the emptied body. I'm not sure how my stomach will handle this one. In 2013, a 24-year-old male model from Georgia was found dead by hikers in California's Mojave Desert 2.5 months after he disappeared. His eyes, lungs, liver, kidneys, and heart had been removed. When I say empty, I mean empty. No evidence of a perpetrator was ever found, or even any leads as of 2016. Police felt that the removed organs did not indicate he had been murdered by an organ-obsessed killer. They thought the missing organs could be blamed on scavenging animals, but it just is too odd in this case because the body was still intact. It's almost like the organs were removed professionally. Whether it was a homicide or a natural cause of death, no reason was ever found for why he died or where he did. The investigation is still going.
Oh my god, Jocelyn, that is horrendous. I don't like the sound of that at all, I am officially freaked out. On a bit of a lighter note, at number 5, we have ancient weed. Whoa. So we knew that the Gobi Desert in northwest China was blazing hot, but the whole place got blazier. In 2008, basically a huge stash of ancient marijuana was found buried in a tomb. Busting the oldest weed stash, archaeologists found 2 pounds of cannabis plants that were thought to have been preserved underground for 2.7 millennia. The stash was buried next to the body of a 35-year-old Caucasian man who likely used the drug for its medicinal benefits. The question on everyone's lips is, can you still get high from it? Well, it seems that the plant still did have its resinous hairs intact. These are the things that contain the psychoactive compounds, so probably you could get high from it. Although, who knows, it's so old, who knows what that high would be like, honestly. I bet that some people would love to venture on that trip, but for me, I think I'd really rather not.
Taking the number 4 spot is dinosaur tracks. I know what you're thinking, you probably don't believe me and you probably think I'm a little bit crazy. And some of my friends might agree with you, but I'm telling you that I'm not. In a desert in Utah, a hiker discovered a collection of footprints left behind 125 million years ago by a number of different dinosaurs. In 2014, volunteers spent hours sweeping, scraping, and brushing the tracks. This isn't just a small rock with some prints on it. Over 200 tracks were uncovered, and in one case there was 17 consecutive prints from the same animal. Paleontologist Rebecca Hunt Foster said, "It helps fill in these gaps about these animals that we don't know much about. We know they were here, we just don't find their bones." What you can see in the images of these tracks is a crocodile dragging its tail while apparently leaving a slash in the hardened mud. You can also see that a 3-toed meat eater walked there too. Some could see this as a really cool thing, some could see it as a little bit scary. Finding tracks of dinosaurs just reminds me that they were in fact real and that they once walked this earth too. Who knows what else is out there?
I feel like 3-toed meat eater is an excellent band name, so if anyone's watching and you need a band name, have it on us. Coming in at number 3, we have the claw. Paranormal researchers found what looked like a giant alien claw in the Peruvian desert in January 2017. The claw was found in a cave near the ancient city of Cusco, and it is so big that if it belonged to a human, they would have to be 9 foot tall. Now, skeptics are calling it a fake, which, to be fair, given the source and the lack of DNA evidence to back it up, I'm thinking actually, maybe that isn't a bad shout. Still though, I just really like saying the claw. The claw! Alright guys, here we are at spot number 2 with the Lost Student film set. I know I was a little confused at first too. In 1923, dunes near the Santa Barbara served as the site of a legendary student film called The 10 Commandments. 90 years later, the remains of the massive movie set are being excavated. Roughly 1,500 workmen spent 6 weeks building the huge Egyptian city set. It included a 35-foot tall statue, a 110-foot gate, and 21 sphinx, each weighing 5 tons. Why was it that after production was over, did the director not truck the set back to LA or simply leave it standing? Peter Bronson is a filmmaker who is on the hunt to figure it out. He says, "I think there were 2 things going on here. Hauling away all that statuary would have been very expensive, so I think he pulled a fast one and buried it. Also, if he left it standing, the very next day someone would be there filming a quick one on his set and they would be on the streets with it within a few weeks." An interesting theory for sure. Bronson has been seeking the vanished set since 1982. Some objects have already been excavated and are already on display while the rest is still buried. It'd be interesting to see what else was left behind. I can't believe that! They spend so much on a set and then they're just like bury it, no one else can use it. That makes me feel not okay about film. Alright, finally coming in at number 1 of our scariest things found in the desert, we have a shipwreck. A shipwreck, wait, what? A shipwreck in the desert? What, where, how, why? Questions? Well guys, I introduced to you Namibia's Skeleton Coast. Now the Skeleton Coast is very inhospitable. It's something a bit like the end of the earth. The desert land beside the ocean is home to an estimated 500 shipwrecks, with rumours that the land is cursed. It seems that the Bushmen of Namibia refer to the area as the land God made in anger, whereas the Portuguese used to call it the Gates of Hell. Either way, sounds lovely. Basically, if your ship was run aground in this area, you would likely die. Drinking this seawater will send you mad, and there is almost no precipitation in the desert by the water. In 2016, the wreck of a 500-year-old ship was found in the desert with over $10 million worth of gold coins on board. The wreckage of the Bom Jesus set sail from Lisbon in 1533 and was headed for India when it became beached in the Namibian hellhole. It wasn't just the gold of interest to archaeologists either. there were skeletal remains of the crew found. To me, a shipwreck in the desert is so crazy I can't get my head around it, and it's really scary.
At number 10 we have a pit full of arms. I don't think anything nice was ever found at the bottom of a pit. No one has gone to the base of a pit and found a PlayStation 5 with The Last of Us 3. It's almost always death, and this pit was no different. Some archaeologists in France came across a super deep pit. Like if you fell in it you would die 100% of the time. There's no way you're sticking that landing, not at all. So it makes sense at the bottom of this pit they found a bunch of skeletons from people who had been thrown into the pit. It was Death Pit, which is the name of the metal band I'm going to start after this video. Now the thing that was so shocking about the bodies that were thrown into this pit of despair is what happened to the bodies before they were thrown into the pit. All the people had their arms chopped off and their skulls bashed in. Like, you're already going to throw the people to their death. Why would you mutilate their bodies before you chuck them in? The pit was literally layered. At the bottom layer was all arms and the top layer was all bodies that had their heads smashed in. Like some sort of sick cake. Who would do such a thing? Well, the bodies were dated back to 4000 BC, so their motivations were very unknown, but it's probably just because they were cavemen. At number 9 we have the black sarcophagus. This is my problem with archaeologists. They're always digging around finding things that maybe don't want to be found. Maybe something was buried 20 feet underground because it was never supposed to be opened ever again. Like the black sarcophagus. This thing was dug up in 2018 and right away people were saying that this thing was cursed. It got posted all over the internet and it spread around like a mid-tier meme. Like, you know, the kind of meme that lasts for like 2 or 3 weeks at best. Like when you look at it you just blow air out of your nose and then move on. Like that kind of meme. It wasn't great. Well, everyone said that this thing was going to rain fire from the sky if it was ever opened. I mean, and it does look like something pulled right out of a movie. And guess what the archaeologists did anyways? They opened it. Oh, this creepy box that might kill everyone? Let's just open it just in case. There might be a boat in there, who knows? Now, nothing can be connected directly to the sarcophagus, but remember how much people were complaining about 2019 and saying a bunch of bad stuff happened? Coincidence? I think not. At number 8 we have head on your chest. How do you want to die? This might be something you want to pick because it's the only thing in life that you can guarantee. I want to die on TV saying something cool, so my death quote gets turned into a meme like 100 times. It's like all over the internet. I want my death to be turned into like an Infinity War level meme, like a huge level meme. Also, side note, Thanos did nothing wrong. But I don't think that these guys got to pick their death. There were some weird bodies that were discovered in England. They were dated back to the 14th century. The weird thing about these bodies is that they were all buried laying flat with their heads propped up on their chest like they were holding a basketball, which means that someone was chopping off these dudes' heads before they sent them into the ground. Not the most fun way to die, but at least they got to keep their head. They didn't start kicking it around like a soccer ball or something. If I was one of the guys in charge, I would bury them, but I would switch their heads around so the person finding them would have to do a match game to match up the right heads. At number 7 we have puzzle time. Did you know that if you throw a person's body into a bog and it's cold enough, it will help preserve the body? Well, I didn't know this either until I started making this list. Well, there was a dude in Scotland who found some bodies that had been buried for hundreds of years, but it seemed like before they were buried, someone had been doing some bog therapy on them to keep them in a preserved state. This is slightly creepy, but let's kick it up a notch. There were 2 bodies found, a man and a woman. Both of their bodies were very strange. There were limbs and body parts that seemed to be too large for their frame, almost like it was some sort of mutation. Everyone was confused. Well, thanks to the magic of DNA, the people digging up these bodies were able to find out that this happened because someone had been taking different body parts from several dead bodies and assembling them to make some sort of creation. Very creepy. And some of the mismatched body parts were hundreds of years older than the others. How did someone find bodies that were hundreds of years old, and why did they try to attach them to other people's bodies? That's something we will never know. At number 6 we have the cheese. Usually people digging around in Egypt want to find a gold tomb that is filled with guys wrapped in toilet paper. But every now and again you find something a little more strange. A tomb in Egypt had a little snack inside waiting to be dug up. Why would this be on a list of scary things? Well, because the cheese was over 3,000 years old and was packed with some unknown bacteria. If someone was dumb enough to bite into this cheese, they could unleash a plague that could wipe out humanity as we know it. Death would sweep through the world and ravage every last man, woman, and child. There would be nowhere on earth that you would be able to be safe from the terrors of this bloody cheese. People would become cheese monsters, like all the creatures that walk around in The Last of Us, except they would smell like Parmesan. Well, either that or the dude would just get the worst diarrhea of his life, like poop water for like 8 weeks straight or something. Really, either is possible when you weigh it out. At number 5 we have Wolverine-ish. For this next one, it really depends on what part of the story you look at to whether or not this will be a nightmare to you. So in Italy, a body was found from someone who seemed to be from the 8th century. He was a pretty old dude, and this guy had his arm chopped off right above the elbow. Now that is the scary part, someone amputating part of your body. No one wants to have their arm chopped off at any joint. But in place of his missing forearm was a big knife. This guy had a stump, and then at the end of it was an engineered prosthetic that had a knife on it. He had a knife hand, which I think is cool as hell. This guy could be walking around in the year 800 punch stabbing people like a G. Punch stab, punch stab, punch stab, punch stab, punch stab. This guy's cool as hell. But I can understand why that would scare people, because you never want to be on the bad end of a guy punch stabbing you. At number 4, we have a gnawing sensation. The body of a Roman woman had a little surprise in her nether regions, and let me tell you, it was not a sexy one. Not everything below the belt gets hot. In fact, this was one of the most gross things that has ever been discovered, and I never want to come in contact with anything like this ever again. Well, this lady was found with a tumor in her pelvis. What was crazy about it is that the tumor was caused by an infected egg inside of her womb. This would cause the egg to partially develop, and the tumor had teeth in it. Ugh. That sounds like something that should be pulled out of a horror movie. The living tumor that has come to take over your planet. You will all be slaves to this toothy monster. Because this lady happened to die before x-rays were even a concept, there's a good chance she had no idea what dental danger was inside her body. At number 3, we have vampires. As much as we complain about the world, it's nice to know that things used to be way worse. Like maybe you don't like your job, or maybe you were stuck in traffic, or maybe you even got dumped. But at least you weren't tortured to death because people thought you were a vampire. A tomb in Bulgaria uncovered a man from the 1200s who seemed to be horribly murdered, most likely by people who thought he was some sort of vampiric monster. It seemed that he was forced into a grave, and then someone took a bladed weapon to his leg and hacked it off. And because the only way to kill a vampire is to stab it through its heart, they hammered a steel stake through this dude's chest, pinning him to his own grave. Joke's on them, you have to use a wooden stake, so this guy rose from the dead to seek revenge. Just kidding, he died for sure. He was for sure dead. At number 2, we have Pit of Sorrow. Something this list has taught me is that things have definitely got nicer over time. I know the world isn't perfect, but this next point shows how commonplace brutality used to be. There was a pit found in Austria that had an entire tribe of people in it. 94 bodies were found, and they were all dated back to 5200 BC. Now, how did all these people from the tribe die in the same place? Well, they were attacked, and from the looks of it, it seemed like the opposing tribe came in to wipe them all out. Everyone in the pit had their head cracked open, and then had their knees and legs snapped, and some of them had arrowheads lodged in their backs. The thing that sent this over the edge is that 27 of the 94 bodies were children. This tribe, the attacking tribe, made sure that everyone was dead except for women. There were only 2 female bodies found in the gravesite, so this most likely means that the women were all taken into slavery. Alright, for the number 1 spot, we have some hidden tunnels that were dug up in Chavinduantar in Peru. The tunnels zigzagged into all sorts of hidden rooms that could have been used as some sort of hiding place or escape route from invading tribes, but it seemed that the main thing that the tunnels were used for was sacrificing people in rituals. Several bodies were discovered that were dismembered in all sorts of strange ways. They would be strapped down to altars and then mutilated to death. Some of them had their heads chopped off, and others seemed to have their hearts pulled out of their chest while they were still alive. Imagine someone putting a bag over your head in the middle of the night and then dragging you to some horrible underground layer and then cutting your still beating heart out of your chest. That's one hell of a Friday night.
Starting us off in our number 10 spot, the Taklamakan mummies. Back in 1900, Swedish explorer Sven Hedin found the ancient city of Lulan buried under the sands of the Taklamakan Desert, otherwise known as the Great Desert of Asia. What was incredible about his find was that the lost Lulan kingdom was a near 4,000-year-old city, but the really wild part came about 80 years later. In 1979, a group of explorers came across a mummy in the ancient ruins that later became known as the Beauty of Lulan because of how perfectly she was preserved. And soon enough, more and more mummies began popping up across the desert. But the mysterious part wasn't the mummies themselves, but rather that they were Caucasian in origin, something that apparently the Chinese government at the time did not want to openly admit. Why didn't they want to admit that? Were they hiding some kind of dark secret perhaps? I mean, truthfully, we don't know, but what we do know is that the discovery proves some kind of settlement of Caucasian people among the ancient Asian city, and really only created more questions than it answered. Next up in our number 9 spot, the horned kangaroo. Back in 2002, an excavation in Australia's Nullarbor Desert uncovered a wild collection of megafauna fossils. But out of all of the out-of-this-world fossils that were discovered, the strangest, most unsettling find was what appeared to be the skull of a horned kangaroo. Now, I would be nervous to get too close to, well, just a normal kangaroo. I mean, they aren't the most dangerous animal out there, but they have some pretty powerful legs, and if they feel threatened, they sure know how to use them. But throw in some horns, well, you could be in some real trouble. The good news is that the fossils date back sometime between 200,000 to 500,000 years old, so we're safe from any kind of horned kangaroo attack. But still, they are definitely an unusual find. Unlike any other kangaroo, both fossilized and living, they are the only kind to have a strange bulbous snout and bony projections sticking out from above its eyes, which, I mean, just truly sounds like a terrifying sight. Coming in at number 8, mysterious geoglyphs. Nearly 100 years ago, World War I pilots came across strange circular geoglyphs at the Wadi Wasad in the Black Desert of Jordan. Now, for centuries, there have been many theories about the truth behind early geoglyphs, such as the Nazca lines in Peru. And while the running theory is that geoglyphs are man-made, there are many people out there that feel they need more convincing. The strange geoglyphs in question are even more mysterious than the others, as similar ones have been revealed across Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen, all dating back roughly 8,500 years old, meaning they predate the Nazca lines by 6,000 years, which is wild. The biggest reason behind the conspiracy that geoglyphs are not man-made is that these ones in particular are really only visible from the sky, and so it begs the question, why design these monuments that you are unable to view? Unless it wasn't humans who were designing them. However, experts have come forward saying that they could have been created as a gift to the gods, hence the bird's eye. So, I mean, who knows? Coming in at number 7, a whale graveyard. Maybe I'm just thinking a little too in the box, but the last thing I would think to find in a desert would probably be a giant whale cemetery. And I can imagine that it was just as surprising to the people who stumbled upon it in the first place. Back in 2010, Chile's Atacama Desert was undergoing some construction for a highway widening project, and it was here that 75 whale skeletons were unearthed, each one laying right next to the other, mere yards apart. According to the Royal Society Journal, the graveyard appears to be the result of 4 separate mass strandings of the creature, with evidence strongly suggesting that the whales had ingested some kind of toxic algae along with their prey. Once the toxins were ingested, it didn't take long before the mammals began dying and washing onto flat ground, and eventually, over time, the flat sands slowly buried them. So, while this might have a good explanation, you have to admit that coming across the fossilized bones of 75 whales in the middle of a desert wouldn't freak you out at first. Next up at number 6, an alien claw. The Institute in Cari, Cusco, otherwise known as a group of self-proclaimed paranormal researchers, appears to have come across an inexplicable finding while searching the desert caves and tunnels of Cusco. According to the group, back in 2016, they came across what they believe to be a giant alien claw, as well as an elongated skull that allegedly has real skin tissues still intact. Even more mysterious was when one of the researchers said that after performing x-rays on the peculiar finding, they were able to conclude that the 12-inch alleged alien hand apparently had 3 fingers with metallic implants. Plus, given the size of the hand, it's safe to assume that it would have belonged to a very tall individual, roughly 8 to 9 feet tall by the researchers' estimates. Now, to be fair, there have been very tall humans close to this size. The tallest recorded man, for example, was Robert Wadlow, and he measured 8'11", so It's not impossible that it belonged to a person, but the metal fingers are still definitely suspicious. I don't know, do you think it could belong to an alien species that invaded Earth, or is it just the fossilized hand of an incredibly tall human? Coming in at number 5, the Atacama humanoid. First discovered in a deserted Chilean town in the Atacama Desert in 2003, this alien-like humanoid, commonly referred to as Ada, measures just 6 inches tall and caused quite the stir upon its discovery. First of all, it was unlike anything that had ever been found, and the mysterious tiny thing had everyone absolutely perplexed. Immediately, many came forward wanting to claim the find as proof of alien life, assuming that it was some alien race that had been mummified thousands of years ago, and for a while, there wasn't actually much to counter that argument. But after 10 years of research, scientists were finally able to confirm once and for all that the tiny 6-inch tall mummy was in fact human. With the help of a DNA sample extracted from Ada's bone marrow, they were able to conclude that this tiny skeleton was a premature fetus, and on top of that, the result of a rare mutation of dwarfism. But the most strange part of the whole ordeal, apparently these findings were later disputed and caused quite the controversy among scientists, as a second group of researchers claimed that the anomalies previously stated by the first group were not present. I mean, honestly, I don't know much about the drama between researchers, but what I do know is that if I came across a 6-inch tall mummy that looked like an alien, I would probably never sleep again. Coming in at number 4, mummified dogs. Maybe it's just me, but mummies just kind of give me the creeps. Like, I know there's absolutely nothing evil about them per se. They're just preserved bodies, but like there's also nothing evil about someone being buried in a graveyard, but still their ghosts run rampant. That's all I'm saying. And what's even more bone-chilling than a human mummy? Well, I would say the mummy of an animal, or rather, 8 million animals to be exact. The haunting discovery came about a few years back when archaeologists discovered a catacomb network built roughly 2,500 years ago under the Sahara Desert in Egypt. And to their shock, they discovered the remains of 8 million mummified dogs and puppies inside. It's believed the dogs were likely used as some kind of offering to the gods. Apparently at the time, it wouldn't have been viewed so much so as a sacrifice, but rather a pious act, with the animal acting as some kind of intermediary between the donor and the gods. And if that wasn't wild enough, there are apparently many other catacombs across the same desert dedicated to different animals, such as baboons, cows, bulls, hawks, and cats, all for different rituals. I mean, I can't even really grasp the concept of that many dead of anything all in one place, and hopefully I never have to. Coming in our number 3 spot, we have fairy circles. In the grasslands of the Namib Desert lies one of the most peculiar phenomenons I have ever come across. Inexplicable circular patches that have been astutely nicknamed fairy circles. These strange circles have baffled scientists for decades, as there is not yet concrete, logical explanation behind them. Of course, many have come forward with their own version of truth behind them, some saying that they're from underground dragons or that they are left behind by spirits. But of course, the most popular conspiracy surrounding them is that they are the result of UFO landings similar to the crop circle. What's maybe most mysterious is that the fairy circles grow from 6 to 40 feet throughout their lifetime, and that they remain in one place for up to 75 years. Until, that is, for all intents and purposes, they die and disappear forever. Of course, there are a few scientific theories behind their origin, like sand termites, evaporation of water from plants, rainfall patterns, and such, but they still remain a huge mystery to even the most dedicated researchers. However, in the oral myths of the Himba people, it's believed these barren grass patches are caused by Mukuru, their original ancestor, or that they are the footprints of gods. Nonetheless, they are definitely bizarre occurrences, so all I can hope for is that they have nothing to do with aliens. Coming in our number 2 spot are Marfa Lights. Found in the small desert town in Texas, the Marfa Lights are an inexplicable occurrence that have been appearing for generations. According to eyewitnesses of the phenomenon, mysterious orbs of light, roughly the size of basketballs in varying colors, will hover, split, merge, and dart across the desert lands in an impossibly predictable fashion. While the indigenous peoples would tell stories of the lights being fallen stars from the sky, paranormal investigators have theorized that they belong to wandering souls lost in the desert. And I mean, it wouldn't be the first time orbs of light have been associated with wandering entities, but still, that doesn't make it any less haunting, even if it turned out to be true. However, as I'm sure you can imagine, there are many out there who are certain that the strange lights are of otherworldly origin, specifically claiming that the lights are from alien UFOs darting through the sky. And I mean, if they are right, that would be terrifying. Experts, of course, have tried to ease the public with theories surrounding methane gas, but truthfully, their theories are just that, their theories. The truth behind these eerie orbs of light remains a mystery, just as they have for thousands of years. And last up, in our number 1 spot, we have Dead Sea Scrolls. About 75 years ago, one of the most remarkable archaeological finds was made. Between the years of 1946 to 1956, inside the Qumran caves of the Judean desert, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, and although it's widely regarded as an incredible find, that doesn't mean it came without its mysteries. Of the 981 texts, the big question mark came from the elusive copper scroll. From what experts can tell, it appears to be a treasure map that intricately details 64 different locations where several tons of gold and silver can be found. But what's perplexing about the scroll is that it is inscribed with a form of Hebrew that is different to the ancient Hebrew found in the rest of the text. Specifically, the dialect on the copper scroll is one that was commonly used nearly 100 years later than the rest. So it begs the question, how is that possible? Was the copper scroll written a full 100 years later and placed with the rest? I mean, maybe? But truthfully, we have no clue exactly what went down. Of course, alien conspiracy theorists have used this as proof that an alien race assisted in making the scrolls, but as you can imagine, there is not really any real proof to back that up either. To top it off, despite several expeditions, no one has been able to find the locations of these alleged treasures, which only adds to the bone-chilling mystery of it all.
Number 10. Desert glass. Flashback to 29 million years ago, an asteroid struck Earth. The energy of the explosion caused a vast region of the Libyan desert to turn into glass, what has become known now as desert glass. Love a name that's straight to the point. Glass made from the stars, essentially. Most of it can still be found in the crater, but you can also find it in, I don't know, the tomb of one of the most famous pharaohs of Egypt. When King Tutankhamun's tomb was opened, among all of his treasures, there was a stunning scarab beetle carved from green glass. While they probably had little to no idea of where the glass came from, it is incredibly symbolic of the Egyptians' relationship to the stars. One of the knives that also accompanied the pharaoh in the afterlife was a dagger made from a meteorite. Whether they knew the two were connected, we can only guess, but either way, its otherworldly beauty was apparent and worthy of a king. Number 9. Gold. Did you know there was actually a gold rush in the Sahara Desert at some point? Right? The story of how it was discovered varies, but the most popular story is that a goat herder found it. They found an odd looking rock and asked his friend what it could be. Apparently he had a very good friend because he told him that he had found a gold nugget. He could have lied and been like, "That's a rock, I'll take it off your hands. You don't need a rock," and then sold it for $1,400 because that was the value. Of course, word got out and people flocked onto the site. As is tradition with gold rushes, most people didn't find anything, but a few got rich. Life just isn't fair. People still continue to search for gold in the area to this very day, though the chances of finding much of anything can be pretty slim. They went to town on that area. Number 8. Dinosaur bones. Though it may look pretty barren,
Don't be deceived. The velociraptor is just one example of a desert-dwelling dinosaur that existed. It is still pretty rare to find fossils of them, but it is not unheard of. Still, paleontologists were delighted when they discovered the nearly complete skeleton of the Mansorosaurus in a desert of modern Egypt. This colossal specimen was the size of a school bus and became one of the most monumental finds in the area. But wait, there's more! Back in 2008, paleontologists uncovered a new type of pterosaur in the Sahara among other fossils from creatures that would have lived, I don't know, 100 million years ago. So, not just sand after all. Number 7. Whales? By now I think we all know the world was a lot different before we humans got here, but it's still hard to imagine. Antarctica, for instance, used to be a tropical area of the world, so when I say that the Sahara wasn't always the desolate desert it is today, you know what I mean. But how do we know? Well, Whale Valley is one reason. The area that is now known as Whale Valley was covered by the lost Tethys Ocean, which explains why there are tons of fossils of some of the earliest known species of whale. That's right, incredibly well preserved specimens of species that died over 37 million years ago scatter this area in the desert. The site gives incredible insight into how whales evolved and changed over millions of years, but they aren't the only things they found. Massive shark teeth have been unearthed, creating a larger picture of who the big players were around that time. Number 6. A 700-mile long dust storm. Check out this YouTube clip. If your jaw didn't just drop, something is wrong with you. Also, for all of my book talk friends, you know, Shadow and Bone fans, you know what that looks like? It's a much sandier version of The Fold. Ben Barnes, where are you? I'm not sorry if you didn't get that reference. Keep up. Imagine that thing coming towards you. In the desert, dust storms are a pretty familiar occurrence and they range in size. It's definitely not fun for sand to be sprayed in your face while you're at the beach, but now imagine that sensation going on for, I don't know, 12 hours. This dust storm was captured by NASA in May 2011 and was 700 miles in length, which is wider than the state of Texas. Why do they happen? Well, the sand isn't held down by any roots, nor does the ground get packed down by water. So if wind decides to mess around, you better take cover. Unless you want the most painful exfoliating treatment you've ever had in your life. But at the same time, you know, do you? If it saves you money, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm joking. Please. Exfoliating is not that good for you. Number 5. Kitty Hawk. The last time anyone ever heard from Sergeant Dennis Coping was on June 28, 1942. He was on his way to the British desert base in a damaged P-40 Kitty Hawk aircraft when things went horribly wrong. Like, I don't know how they can go right if you're in a flying damaged plane, but sadly, Coping and the Kitty Hawk disappeared from eyes and ears for years. The craft was only discovered in 2012 by an oil worker and found the aircraft mostly intact. Even more distressing was that there were signs of the parachute having been used as a kind of shelter. Coping must have waited beneath it hoping that help would finally come, but they were 70 years too late. However, his body was never found alongside the plane. The plane was taken and restored for display in the El Alamein Museum, but many were displeased. They believed that the plane should have stayed there as a memorial for the man who never made it home. Number 4. The Iron Man Motorcycle Man. This story, you just can't make it up. This story is equal parts hilariously charming and mind-boggling. It's so impressive. It might be more impressive than Tony Stark building an Iron Man suit in the desert, just by the sheer fact that this guy had less to build with. Like, the man I'm referring to, his name is Emile Leray. Emile decided back in 1993 that he was gonna road trip across the Sahara Desert in a Citroen 2CV, which is this. Check out this picture. Of course, this dollar store Herbie Fully Loaded broke down after he crashed it while going off-road. So what did he do? Well, he built himself a motorcycle. He took the car apart and built himself a motorcycle. He spent 12 days on this impromptu project, and with only 16 ounces of water left, he drove the dang thing home. The funniest part is he was picked up by the Moroccan police a day later and fined because his documents were for the Citroen 2CV, not an improvised motorcycle. What?
take the guy to a hospital. No pat on the back, no wow buddy. They charged him for not having his papers in order. Meanwhile, he just came from the desert. Oh man, like this was so good. It's amazing. I just can't handle this story. Well, there you go. Check out this YouTube clip. Also, this is what the guy looks like. Amazing.
De nombreuses fois, les problèmes se sont posés au niveau d'un petit village qui s'appelle Tilemzoun où les militaires m'ont arrêté. Donc ces militaires m'ont demandé de rebrousser chemin et de retourner.
Number 3, the Napta Stones. This channel is no stranger to mythical megaliths, and I got another one for you. The Napta Stones are the oldest known stone circle in the world. They were discovered by sheer luck in 1973. A guy named Eid Marif stumbled across them and took his colleague Fred Wendorf to see it. 700 miles south of the Great Pyramid, Napta Playa was built more than 7,000 years ago. Like many of the other stone circles we've mentioned in previous videos, many people believe these stones have mystical powers, and so did the people who made them. Kind of. Archaeologists have determined that they were constructed by a nomadic people who worshipped cattle. They were built as a way to mark the summer solstice and monsoon season, so in a way, it's possible that this could be the world's oldest astronomical observatory. Number 2, Maro Prosperi. Again, can't make this story up. I can't make this story up. It's kind of an adventure story, and technically, they did find him in the Sahara Desert, so there. This story is just wild. I can't make this up. This is survival in its truest form. Some people live for the extreme, and this Italian sports enthusiast was just that kind of person, though this may have been too much. The Marathon of Sands, or the Sahara Marathon, is the toughest foot race on Earth. It's a 6-day annual trek covering 156 miles, about 6 normal marathons. You have to be entirely self-sufficient, bringing your own food, which Maro proved to be. On the 4th day, a sandstorm hit and Maro disappeared within it because he kept running and then he didn't realize that he had gone off the path. Flash forward to an 8-day journey of intense dehydration and starvation. Maro did incredible things to survive, including drinking his own urine when he ran out of water, licking dew off rocks, and feasting off of bats, bird eggs, and lizards he found in an abandoned temple. With no rescue in sight and days of pointless searching with no checkpoints, he tried to take his own life, but he was too dehydrated that it didn't work, as his blood coagulated too soon. So he just kept walking and eventually stumbled upon a girl tending to a flock of goats. There's tons more to that story, like a lot, so it would actually take a whole video to be like, what are all the things that he did? As of 2014, Prosperi participated in the Marathon des Sables 7 times and placed 12th in 2001. Even after this experience in the Sahara, he was like, yeah, you know what, I survived that. I'm gonna go do other things. This man just doesn't quit. And last but not least, the Gobero skeletons. Paul Sereno and his team were looking for dinosaur skeletons when they stumbled across an even bigger surprise waiting for them. Sereno had just come from a team who uncovered a Spinosaurus and was eager for more. As I mentioned, it was really exciting for dinosaurs to be found in the desert. Instead though, he discovered the largest human graveyard in the Sahara Desert. The site was located in Gobera, Niger. Evidence suggests that the area was once a lush environment. Mixed in with the oddly placed human bones, they found amphibians, reptiles, and other creatures long since passed away, so that must have meant that there was a lush forest around. They didn't even have to do that much digging to find them, as some of the bones were just poking out of the sand as if they were waving hello. 10 years and 5 expeditions later, Sereno has found more than 200 burial plots, some of them buried in peculiar ways. One man was found with his head inside a pot, another sitting on a turtle shell, and this one's really sad, a woman embracing 2 children with her hands entwined. The bones are from 2 separate civilizations, the Kiphian and the Tenarian, which are 1,000 years apart. So how did they end up side by side? Will we ever know, or will the Sahara clutch that secret just a little longer? We'll have to wait and see.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Spider Rock art. In 2013, archaeologists were shocked to discover what can only be described as a wall of ancient spider art in the desert. It's the only known example of its kind from the old world. Dating has put the age of this to around 4000 BC, that's over 6,000 years ago. The drawings depict spiders, their webs, and even ensnared prey. Historians have struggled to learn more about the people who actually drew these and their strange obsession with spiders. Some believe it's part of an ancient totemic ritual ritual to combine the spider with the power of the sun. Sounds kind of terrifying. Next up at number 9 now, we have the sailing stones. For many years, scientists were baffled by a mysterious phenomenon in Death Valley, one of the hottest deserts in the world. Heavy stones seemed to be moving by themselves in the mud, leaving trails behind them. Sometimes they were straight, sometimes they were curvy, sometimes they just sharply changed direction. There were no footprints and no obvious ways that these stones were just moving across the desert floor. Theories sprouted up, including everything from magnetic fields to aliens or even the supernatural. Right now, the best scientific theory is that under certain winter conditions in Death Valley, enough ice and water can form to float the rocks across the muddy surface in a light breeze, leaving a trail of mud as they go. At number 8 now, we have the Band of Holes. In the Neza Plateau in Peru lie about 6,000 man-made holes. They begin at the edge of a valley and run up a hill for about 1.5 kilometers. Each one is about 1 meter in diameter and 50 centimeters deep. Here's the thing, locals have no idea how they were made. Archaeologists have been studying them for over 80 years now, trying to figure out their origin and their purpose. It's thought they were made by the Inca Empire, but theories have ranged for their existence from graves to storage sites. Moving on to number 7 now, we have desert glass. When scientists tested a scarab jewel that belonged to Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun, they were surprised to find the glass inside came from before the earliest Egyptian civilization, so this begs the question, where exactly did that glass come from? Eventually they found it came from a thin sheet of glass sprinkled across a huge part of the Sahara Desert. They calculated that this glass could only have been made by a meteor impacting the atmosphere and creating a huge fireball, cooking the sand below with temperatures of up to 18,000 degrees Celsius or 32,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Next up at number 6 now, we have the oldest pot stash in the world. In 2008, archaeologists found almost 2 pounds of marijuana in a 2,700-year-old grave in China's Gobi Desert. That age makes it the oldest stash of cannabis ever discovered. What exactly was it doing there in that grave? Well, according to Dr. Ethan Russo, it could have been for pain control or to aid in mystic divination. The stash is now being stored in the Turpan Museum in China. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the Marie Man. In the late 1980s, someone flying over a remote part of the South Australian desert spotted an image below. A huge hunter, naked and armed with a stick. It could either be a woomera or a boomerang. The man is 2.6 miles tall and is actually still visible today. Experts know it must have been made in modern times as there was no record of its existence before, but it's an absolute mystery as to who designed this thing. Many people have come forward claiming that it was them, but nothing is known for sure. At number 4 now, we have the fairy circles. Deep in the Namibian desert lie millions of strange fairy circles. The circles are devoid of any life, but the edges are surrounded by knee-high grass. Nothing will grow in the middle, even when fertilized soil is added. The circles can reach up to 20 meters in diameter and seem to have been evenly spaced out. They never overlap. They also seem to have a lifespan of at least 75 years. Right now, the leading explanation for their existence is different termite colonies who don't want to encroach on each other's territory. Next up at number 3 spot now, we have the plains. Now what's one thing you don't expect to find buried in an old desert? Plains. During the 2003 coalition invasion of Iraq, the US military was surprised by the lack of enemy planes there. Intelligence reports had said that Saddam Hussein had them before the war, so where exactly were they? A few months into the war, someone noticed a tail fin sticking out of the sand near a military base. After some digging, they found 30 brand new Iraqi planes. For whatever reason, Saddam had thought he could just bury these million-dollar pieces of machinery in the sand and then just dig them up later. Didn't really go to plan. Coming at number 2 now, we have the Nabta Playa. Deep in the Sahara Desert, a Stone Age community built the Nabta Playa, a series of standing stones built 6,500 years ago. This makes them 1,000 years older than Stonehenge and the oldest astronomical alignment of its kind ever discovered. Some of the stones face in a north-south direction, others from east to west. This seems to tell archaeologists that it had some sort of astrological significance. Perhaps they were used to mark the summer solstice or the beginning of the rainy season, back when this desert received a lot more rain. Either way, the mysterious stones are so steeped in history that we may never know the full picture. And finally, number 1 now, we have the mysterious oasis. In 2014, shepherds in the Tunisian desert were shocked to find a huge, beautiful blue lake where there definitely wasn't one before. Before long, locals were arriving to enjoy the oasis and cool off in the extreme heat. The thing is, people aren't really sure where that lake came from. Some people point the finger at seismic activity causing groundwater to rise to the surface. What's even stranger though is that the water started out clear and then turned blue, and then after a few days it was green and filled with algae. The public safety office there issued a public warning that the lake is dangerous and unfit for swimming, but the mystery of its origin continues.
Coming in at number 10, we have King Tut's tomb. If you look at an aerial view of the Valley of the Kings, you will see why King Tutankhamun's tomb went undiscovered for 2,000 years and change. Basically, it's in the desert. Yeah, it's nearer to the edge of the desert and approaching the banks of the River Nile, but the desert nonetheless. Honestly, Egypt is basically desert. Hidden by the shifting sands, his tomb was finally discovered in 1922 by Howard Carter with the investment of Lord Carnarvon. The tomb is undoubtedly one of the scariest things to be dragged up from the desert, but the excavation team were specifically looking for it. They weren't, however, looking for the curse that followed them. Ah yes, the curse of the pharaohs, one of the most worrying things ever to be brought up from the sand. The team that excavated the tomb were quickly dogged by a number of untimely deaths. On the day Carter entered the tomb, a cobra got into his pet canary's cage with the bird dead in its mouth. Now, the cobra is the symbol of the Egyptian monarchy, and the symbolism really wasn't lost on locals who began to panic, and panic, actually was kinda due. Lord Carnarvon, the financial backer of the excavation project, died shortly after the tomb was first breached as a result of an infected mosquito bite. But even weirder, the bite may have matched a healed legion found on King Tut's cheek during his autopsy. Now, 2 of Carnarvon's half-brothers also died shortly after the excavation. One of the doctors who worked on King Tut's bodies, this was radiologist Sir Archibald Douglas Reed. He died later, as did 2 other men. Thanks. Coming into number 9, we have bodies. In something from a scene of Breaking Bad, 5 bodies burned, I quote, burned beyond recognition, were found in the Arizona desert in a burned out SUV in 2012. This was a high number for sure, but not anything new for the area, which is famously dogged by drugs cartels, being so close to the Mexican border. Imagine being the person who found them. Now, in this instance, it was a border control agent whose job it is to patrol the Tucson-Phoenix border. Honestly though, that's not what you want to find when you're at work. Coming into number 8, we have cursed treasure. Is there cursed Aztec treasure hidden in the Utah desert? A lot of people certainly think so. The legends and myths surrounding Montezuma's treasure are enduring in the state. Did 3 children find some of it? Now, this story is of Austin Lyman, Jim Red, and Winston Hurst, who spent their time as kids digging up treasure in the desert around Blanding, Utah. Because of the misfortune that befell the kids when they grew up to be adults, a lot of people have claimed that the ancient relics they found were cursed. Now, Red ended up killing himself, as did 2 other people involved with the later investigation of the antiques. Coming into number 7, we have the Shell oil cover-up. In 1992, Shell were involved in concealing a crude oil leak beneath a Midland residential subdivision. In 2003, incriminating documents were unearthed buried in the desert near Las Vegas. The files buried were under 40 feet of sand, although Shell initially claimed that the material found was simply office refuse. Why bury it so far down then? Following the findings, a jury found the Texas-New Mexico pipeline, a subsidiary of Shell, guilty of covering up the spill. Why is this a scary discovery? If one of the most profitable capitalist corporations in the world wants something disappeared, do you want to be the person that finds it? Honestly, I wouldn't. Coming into number 6, we have the sand patterns. In 2011, Google Earth snapped aerial shots of China's vast Gobi Desert. What did they find? Weird patterns in the sand, like really weird patterns. The grids measured 0.65 miles wide and 1.15 miles long, and the findings sparked a lot of speculation and conspiracy theories. Some speculated they were Chinese weapons testing sites, others said spy satellite calibration targets, replica street maps of Washington DC and New York City, and some even went as far as to say that they were special messages meant for aliens. Now, it turns out that the most likely option was actually spy satellite calibration, but we don't know for sure. Maybe the sand patterns are tracks left by our number 5, the Mongolian death worm. So I guess this is kind of cheating, as the death worm has never officially been found, but the legends are enduring and the reported sightings plentiful. The worm is said to be between 2 to 5 feet feet long, so around 1.5 meters long. It's said to be shaped like none other than a sausage, with neither head nor a tail. It's supposed to be so poisonous that touching it would cause instant death. Not only that, the legend has been embellished over the years, with some accounts saying that the worm spews deadly sulfuric acid and emits a similarly deadly electrical charge. The Mongolian death worm first came to light in the West when explorer and naturalist Roy Chapman Andrews wrote about his expedition into the Gobi Desert. Now this all went down in 1926. The acclaimed explorer found that the Mongolian natives believed firmly in the presence of the fearsome monster in the Gobi Desert, but steadfast evidence has yet to be found. Coming into number 4, we have a lost city in the Sea of Death. The Taklamakan Desert is the largest desert in China and is the world's second largest shifting sands desert. Now the name means you can get in but you can't get out, which is why the desert is often dubbed the Sea of Death. Hundreds of old settlements and thousands of relics have been found buried in this Sea of Death. Now, interestingly, this also includes the lost city of Lulan. A lot of mummified ancient bodies have been found preserved in the sand too, including the 4,000-year-old mummy of a young woman found in 1979. Now she was dubbed the Beauty of Lulan. The desert made up part of the route along the old Silk Road. Who knows what other mysteries are buried under the burning hot sands? How do you guys feel about skulls in the ground? At number 3, we have horned kangaroos. Now I don't know how you feel about kangaroos, but I've never stopped to look at them and felt like, you know what, they need horns. I really don't think that they do. It turns out though there could have been a breed of horned kangaroos once upon a time. These horned kangaroos may have lived in an Australian desert cave. Of course. In May 2002, the bizarre discovery of mutant kangaroo skulls was found in the Nullarbor Plain, Australia. Now the team from the Western Australian Museum in Perth also found evidence of a giant lion. Rah. More from Australia up next. Coming in at number 2, we have the Maori Man. This is a true mystery, one that does send shivers up my spine. The Maori Man, also known as Stuart's Giant, is a massive geoglyph, a design in the ground, a huge one. He's a man holding a throwing stick. Now it was discovered in 1998 in the outback of Australia by a plane flying over. It's 36 miles west of the small outpost town of Maree. The image in the desert sand is still visible today, but geologists have concluded that there's likely no way it could have been created without the use of GPS, which back in 1998 was pretty rudimentary. Nobody knows who created the image. To further add to the mystery, the outline is the exact reverse of the Artemisian Zeus bronze raised from the bottom of the Adriatic Sea. That's the sea between Italy and Croatia. Now this was raised in 1928, 70 years before the man was found. Finally, our only Antarctic entry, but it's a goodie. At number 1, we have Blood Falls. Can you imagine being an explorer and coming across this literal vision from hell? The Bloody Glacier was discovered in 1911 by Australian geologist Griffith Taylor, and it has got more dramatic over the years as the ice melts. It is basically one of the most brutal and accurate metaphors for global warming ever. The falls are amid the Taylor Glacier, and for decades people had no idea why it appeared to be gushing blood. Was it bad juju at play? Was it Mother Nature bleeding? Honestly, actually, none of the above. The red liquid isn't actually blood, it's iron-rich hypersaline water. Nonetheless, can you imagine making this discovery? It looks like an omen from actual Satan, especially dramatic as a burst of red colour amongst all of the white.
Now though, we are getting into our number 10 with the Rongo Rongo writing. 26 tablets were found on the remote Easter Island, thousands of miles out in the Pacific Ocean. Written on them were glyphs which historians have not been able to decipher since they were discovered over 150 years ago. The images are shaped like humans, animals, plants, and geometric patterns. Every single symbol contains a head that is facing up, forward, or to the right. Each one is about a centimeter high. That's pretty much all we know though. It's thought that the writing may contain clues as to how the civilization that lived there ended up collapsing. Okay, at number 9 now, we have the Saphatic rock scripts. In Jordan's Black Desert, among the scorched sand, lie some rocks with very strange writing on them left by people who lived there over 2,000 years ago. They contain images of horses, antelopes, lions, and birds. Archaeological evidence also seems to show these people had access to abundant water. If you look around the desert there now, none of that is there. The writing belongs to a language family known as Saphatic script. It's an almost haunting discovery discovery to find this in the middle of the desert, ancient writing of a world that has since vanished. Okay, next up at number 8 now, we have the Comox Valley Pebbles. In 2016, archaeologists were working at a Comox First Nation tribal site on Vancouver Island. Now, among a lot of the finds there, they found 80 pebbles with inscriptions on them. Each one had a symbol of either a tree, a feather, or the sign for fertility. They're thought to be over 2,000 years old, but other than that, the archaeologists don't really know what the patterns mean. To find so many of them indicates the symbols did hold some great importance to the people who lived there, but their meaning still eludes us. Next up at number 7 now, we have the tourist. In July 2017, Polish archaeologists found messages carved into the walls of the tombs at the Valley of the Kings, written by tourists. That's right, the 2,000-year-old scribbles were written in ancient Greek and were left there by Greek philosophers who were following Plato. The writing was mainly reviews of what the tourists thought of the tombs there, kind of like a 2,000-year-old Yelp review. Little did they know that these reviews would be read 2,000 years in the future. Coming at number 6 now, we have the sword. In 1825, a strange sword with a cryptic code on it was found in an English river. The now 800-year-old sword had an 18-long string of letters on its blade, and nobody knows what it says. Some have said the sword shows Viking origins, while others say it's more medieval European. The sword now lies in the British Library's Magna Carta exhibition, and they have been appealing for anyone out there to try and help them decipher the message. Moving on to number 5, we have the Zhuangzhou relics. China has had civilizations living there for a very long time. In 2013, archaeologists digging at the Zhuangzhou relic site made a shocking discovery. They found artifacts with 5,000-year-old inscriptions on them. That's about 1,400 years older than what they thought was the most ancient written Chinese language. Experts studying the text think they found a 6-word string of shapes strung together to make a sentence, but it will be a long way to discovering the hidden message this writing holds. I think everyone will be fascinated though to discover what the text says, because it is just so old. Think about it, when it was written there were actually still mammoths walking the earth. How's that for a mind blow? Next up at number 4 now, we have the Rosetta Stone. The meaning of this stone isn't hidden anymore, but it's too good to leave off the list. The block of granite was discovered in 1799 and was found to be from Egypt's Ptolemy dynasty, almost 2,000 years old. The text at the top was written in ancient Egyptian using hieroglyphs. Now at the time of its discovery, nobody knew how to translate Egyptian hieroglyphs. It was a language lost in time. However, the Rosetta Stone also contained another text at the bottom. It appeared to be exactly the same message, but written in ancient Greek, a language that is very much understood. Armed with this, experts began to decode the hidden meanings of the hieroglyphs and translate every piece of writing they could find. Alright, at number 3 now guys, we have the Makeva writing. Now a Makeva is an ancient Jewish ritual bath. Many of them have been found in Israel, but one in particular has archaeologists stumped. One of these baths was found in Jerusalem in 2015. It's thought to be about 2,000 years old and contains a number of words and symbols on the wall there that have not yet been deciphered. There's images of boats and palm trees scattered all over the wall. Some of the letters are in Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. They also date to around the same time he lived. Experts say this is a very significant find. They just want to understand the message. Moving on to the number 2 spot now, we have the Shugborough inscription. In the grounds of England's Shugborough Hall, you'll find an 18th century monument commissioned by a man called Thomas Anson. On it, there's an inscription of 2 lines. First line reads O-U-O-S-V-A-V-V, while the second is a D and an M separated by a large space. It's believed that this is a Latin inscription of sorts, but nobody knows anything more than that. Countless people have tried to decipher this over the years. Even men like Charles Darwin and Charles Dickens have tried and they failed. It looks like this cryptic message will never be decoded, but that doesn't stop many people from trying even to this day. And finally, number 1 now guys, we have the Indus script. Experts know that the Indus Valley people and their culture were the precursor to many of the cultures and languages found throughout India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Malaysia. So, you think that everyone would know how to read their language, right? Wrong! Over 4,000 items have been found with the Indus language on it, mainly ranging from 4,500 to 4,000 years old. Experts have yet to understand what any of them mean. The problem is, the length of the average script they find is so short that they can't study it for repeated patterns to try and figure out what the symbols mean.